And I had my heroes all set up to go and do some awesome hero combats, chew through a bunch of the knights. Aemir was set up to go munch through some elves because he's got the fight 6, and they all just flopped super hard.
After last year's trip to one of North America's largest Middle-earth tournaments, I was excited to announce that I was going back. You can check out last year's recap in this video if you haven't already. I really enjoyed last year's tournament and I was really proud of my performance. But of course, I haven't won gold yet, so of course I had to try again. This year, I was able to convince my co-host Ian to join in on the adventure. So you're gonna see him featured in this video as well. Adepticon 2025 was happening at a pretty interesting time, with the new edition having been out for only a few months, and the third book, Armies of Middle-earth, and the match play guide still pending on the horizon. This meant that there were only a limited amount of armies and scenarios, but also not many people have had actual experience with much of anything so far. Both the doubles and grand tournament were set at 700 points. After some practice games, mostly being on Tabletop Simulator, I decided on the Battle of 5 Armies for the grand tournament. It was one of the armies I was most familiar with in the past edition, and the buffs to Legolas and Gwaihir made me think I could have a shot, even though it wasn't one of the meta armies at the time.
All right, so for doubles, what Richard and I decided on was Battle of Fornos. To be honest, it kind of just came apart because I got excited when I finally committed to going and I spammed a bunch of lists at him, and it was just one that we agreed on. But it kind of appealed to both of us, I think, because it has like 2 big heroes, so we both get something fun to play with. It's kind of soupy, 2 different factions in there essentially kind of working together, so it kind of fits our play style well. Also, just splitting the army in half worked well for us and getting all the tools in there that we wanted. So we got a good squad of cavalry and maxing the bows for me, even though it didn't really matter. For my GT list, I did Defenders of the Pelennor. Honestly, it was just kind of looking through all the profiles and stuff, and then I looked at the ghosts. They're looking really, really good right now in terms of like just all the improvements they had. So I wanted to run a squad of them. I had the King of the Dead there for a while, but it didn't add as much as I wanted to, and I thought getting the extra few might and actual mounted hitter was going to make a big difference. And overall, yeah, I think it was a good improvement, good change to the list.
With doubles being on the Friday and the grand tournament being Saturday and Sunday in Milwaukee this year, I arrived at the Vancouver airport at 6 a.m. on Thursday, ready to go.
A large prehistoric tabletop gamer is spotted. Over 6 foot tall, this creature is in search of sustenance. He locates a fountain of water, exactly what he was after. He proceeds to drink with no awareness of its surroundings, knowing he will soon embark on a long journey from home.
Once Ian and I met up, we started to feel the excitement of traveling to an international event once again, and the battle plan scheming started. We began on a great note with our flight offering complimentary drinks first thing in the morning, and we were well on our way. The rest of the day entailed traveling from Chicago, where we landed, to the city of Milwaukee. We arrived at the convention around 6 p.m. local time. There was so much to see in the convention hall, but we were most excited to get into the Middle-earth Gaming Hall and meet all the patrons from our Discord, longtime listeners, and friends from past events. We even got a late night practice game with the Hobby Hobbits when they arrived a few hours later, driving in from Manitoba, where we ended up playing until midnight. They also have a video following their weekend at Adepticon, so go check it out.
The travel day was brutal, but honestly, I think the best part about it was just getting into the room that night and getting a look at all the tables and stuff and talking to the boys from Hobby Hobbits, as well as the guys from Gunter Calls for Ale as well. The brothers, getting to meet them, that was really cool as well. But yeah, just got us kind of like pumped up and ready to go for the next day for doubles.
With the match play guide not being out at this time, we were set to play 3 out of the 6 existing single scenarios for the doubles tournament. Going into this, I had not played with the Battle of Fornost at all, so we were going in fresh.
Okay, yeah, round 1, Falls of Thranduil and Domination. I think we were maybe a little cocky with this one and how we kind of started off. We had some good plays at the start and picked off Toriel and stuff, but the Elves managed to battle it back and made it a tight game, at least towards the end. But we did manage to hold it out and kind of get good positioning and board control, but it ended up being tighter than I think either of us was expecting. Round 2, Radagast's Alliance and Hold Ground. Honestly, same kind of thing. We spent some might to get in and kind of ambush Radagast's Warband while Gohir was coming in the opposite corner, and it didn't really pan out for us that well. We put some wounds on Raddy, but that was about it, and then they managed to win the heroic move and run away and regroup. And then after that, the Eagles really rallied up, and I think maybe we only killed 1 or 2 Eagles the whole game, plus Radagast, and the rest of them were just tearing us apart. So we got lucky and managed to get things on the center, and the game ended on the first roll it could have. If it hadn't have, I think we were pretty cooked. And then round 3, 3 trolls into the death. We have Aenir and Glorfindel, who are very good at killing monsters, so it kind of went the way you'd expect. Got a little tighter, I think, because we lost a couple roll-offs and they managed to break us, but we still managed to shut them down pretty well and table them.
After these close games, we somehow ended with a 3-0 score with a decent amount of VPs. We were surprised to learn that we landed in second out of 72 teams, with only our friends from the Pacific Northwest, the Hammond brothers, beating us out for first place. It felt like a great warm-up to the grand tournament.
All right, so come to it at last, the GT. So round 1 to the death. It's a nice one to start on. I was kind of hoping we'd save that for later on, because obviously there's one of my stronger scenarios. But, nice easy way to start. I was playing against Army of Gundabad, Bolg, 2 Gundabad captains, and then a mercenary captain. So we're playing on like a Rune City board, and I obviously kind of set up with my bows up in the front rank, kind of positioned between 2 terrain pieces, with my ghosts kind of like on the side of my line. So, because I knew he was going to ambush out of one of them, so I knew I wanted to have my ghosts kind of there to be able to respond, and then I kind of kept my AMR and my cavalry back to be able to do the same kind of thing. So yeah, on the approach in, he was running at me, and I got some good shots off. I had 1 turn, I managed to pick off both the spear supports that were touching his banner, with one of the spear supports with Citadel Guards, and then Legolas managed to get the other one and then kill the banner, which was very fortunate, kind of put me up on points there, gave me a lot of momentum. And then the goblins kind of popped up right the turn before the whole lines were about to clash. I managed to fling a couple heroes to my right flank where he didn't have any heroes left. They had all kind of migrated to the left side. So with my free hero combats, kind of swamped that, killed that, and jumped over towards the middle. His goblins kind of came on, but it was the same kind of thing. I had the ghosts on the side, and I was able to respond with my cavalry, kind of shut that down towards the end of the game. So I also managed to one-shot Bolg in that turn. So it was just kind of a tough matchup, I think, for him, and a pretty good one for me. So I managed to pull that one out with a surprisingly big win for me, 19-0.
So for game 1, To the Death was announced, and I saw I was matched up against the Return of the King. My opponent was a bit newer to the game, and he took all the named heroes in this list. This game had him march forward with his entire force, with Legolas hanging back a little bit, making half moves to be able to shoot. My bows took a few fate points off Aragorn as they approached, while he shot off my Lake Town contingent. I was able to position Gwai here, one combat hit, to force heroic strikes off all his heroes by setting up potential barges. When all their might ran out, I swarmed in. On the last turn, I was able to kill the 3 hunters, leaving only the King of the Dead alive. The end score was 20-0.
Okay, so game 2, playing Domination. I think it's kind of like a neutral scenario for me. I've got some good mobility with the ghosts, so I was going up against Battle of Fornost. So luckily, had some good experience with that the day before, so I kind of knew how I was going to operate it. Basically, the way we deployed the objective, I lost the roll-off to pick sides, so I started on a side that basically had one, and then there was two kind of in the center and two towards the back. So he was getting to deploy on more, but I basically got to see almost his whole army deployed before I had to deploy anything, which was nice. And the way he kind of had everything set up, he had his men kind of sitting in front, some of the cavalry behind him, and the elves kind of behind that. So I basically had to start on the line to be able to get over and control any of the objectives. So I set up kind of right in front of his men, hoping to get the first turn move or the first turn roll off, and to be able to just charge in, pin his cavalry, get my heroes throw combating, and just kind of shut that down and get up on kills early if I could before. And ideally try and pin his two big heroes behind the line for the first turn. So that did kind of happen in the first turn. I managed to basically get in, charge all of his men, and I had my heroes all set up to go and do some awesome heroic combats, chew through a bunch of the knights. Aemir was set up to go munch through some elves because he's got the fight 6, and they all just flopped super hard. I think I burned 3 of my free heroic combats. Aemir's didn't go off, and he spent 2 might, and his didn't go off anyway. He only killed 1 elf. The other heroes all had to burn might to win their fights or confirm kills, and then in their second combats they just didn't get anything. So spent a bunch of resources, to try and get tempo, and it did not work. It flopped super hard. And then after that, it just kind of turned into a bit of a grind fest on the lines there, with his 2 big heroes just kind of slowly munching through my left flank. The good news for me was over on our right flank, which is kind of where the central objective was. Just my basic troops that were there managed to munch down the guys that he had put there. And I managed to get Aemir out because he was just kind of to the side there. So I managed to get Aemir out towards the end of the game and fling him back towards the other 2 objectives that were on the right-hand side. So he cleared one and allowed one of my ghosts to run to the other one. So I managed to control those 2. And then the other 2 kind of towards the left, my home one, he managed to capture that one pretty easily because his heroes just cleared everything out. And then he had his one that he deployed on. And then on the center at the end, we ended up tied, which was, fair enough. It came down to the wire, right? His Glorfindel killed up a guy to tie it up, and I had a chance to kill another one to swing it back in my favor, and it didn't quite pan out, but that was a really tough game, honestly. Considering how far back I was in the momentum, I'm pretty happy I managed to claw it back to a draw, and that was, very, very tough game, but it was a good one. It was a lot of fun.
On to game 2. Because of the big win in game 1, I was put on top table, and I was playing none other than a patron from our Discord, Trey. He was also bringing the Return of the King, although he didn't take Gimli, which made the list automatically more competitive than game 1. We had a very tactical setting of objectives and deployment, and due to the terrain dense board, there wasn't much shooting, so we got into fighting in the choke right away. In the first combat after Trey moved in, I set up a barge with Gwaihir next to the King of the Dead. He decided not to strike up, gambling that I wouldn't be able to one-shot him. Due to suboptimal rolls, Gwaihir had to burn all his might to confirm the kill. I did think about this, and it just seemed like the right play at the time. However, the following turn, it all went south for me. I lost a priority, and then the move-off roll. Aragorn was able to get into Gwaihir, strike up with a higher fight than Gwaihir, and put 2 wounds on Gwaihir, and he decided to spend an extra might to deal 3 wounds to Gwaihir. And I ended up failing all 3 fate with Gwaihir, and that was it for the bird. From there, it was a rough time stopping Aragorn. A couple turns later, I took a look at the dead pile. I had around 10 deaths of elves and dwarves, and Gwaihir, of course, compared to Trey, who had only lost the King of the Dead and a dead horse. It didn't look good for me, and from there, I was playing an uphill battle, trying to limit my loss, or potentially tie if I was lucky. However, after a slog in the middle, the dice started to turn for me in the late game. And in a last turn scramble for the objectives, I was able to scrape by with a 9-2 win. Incredibly well played by Trey, giving me the hardest fought game in the tournament.
All right, game 3. So looking at the scenarios we had left, considering I was going into Defenders of Helm's Deep, with Legolas, Theoden, and Gamling, and I think about 48 models. I was not pumped about the scenarios we had left. And then we rolled Hold Ground. And I was like, okay, I have a chance at this. Maybe if one of his warbands gets isolated, I can kind of make this work, which kind of happened. So basically all of our warbands ended up coming in the corner, but his Gamling warband kind of ended up being split between my army, Aemir, and Irelis on one side, and then the rest of my army on the other side, and then his warband, and there's like a little building, and then the rest of his army was on the other side of that. So I was kind of hoping to have a good chance at picking off a bunch of Gamling stuff. So what happened is we ended up engaging there, and I was trying to like just bunch down his numbers and then swing my troops towards the center. So we ended up doing a lot of fighting around these houses. My Citadel Guard were just performing like crazy. They were getting a lot of kills, munching through a lot of dudes. I honestly didn't think I had a chance at breaking him throughout like most of the game, but they actually put in a lot of work. So we kind of ended up, fighting between the board edge, one house, and then there's a secondary line between these two houses. They were fighting some more there, and then we were both kind of swinging our troops out towards the center behind that bigger house there. And as the game progressed, I managed to get Aemir, Legolas, and most of their warbands and stuff, and a good number of my troops out there blocking him off from the center for the last couple turns. And then he had to march up Theoden and Legolas to try and get into the middle. I still had a lot of resources there, so I did my free heroic combats, and I managed to kill a bunch of his stuff and really push him back and box him out from the center there. So I managed to triple him on the center, keep everybody else boxed out. So that was another big win for me, but it was a tight one. Probably couldn't have done that if the Citadel Guard hadn't been performing, but I did manage to break him, I think, on the last turn as well. Yeah.
Game 3, I was matched up against the Depths of Moria, and I was hoping the scenario was anything else other than what was decided on, Hold Ground. I knew it was going to be a tough one from there. I came on the board first, all in one corner. My opponent Anakin had his warbands come in surrounding me. I got to place one of his warbands where I put across the board, so he didn't completely overwhelm me from the start, but perhaps this would become my undoing in this game. My strategy was to throw models into his army to slow him down while running as many as my models I can towards the middle, even if that meant breaking myself in the process. I ended up only winning one priority roll this game, and that made my task even harder. The game ended on the first roll luckily, and I was able to get 9 points in the middle due to my dominant models. But unfortunately, Anakin's warband from the other side came in unscathed and had 11 points in the center, in addition to massacring my army. It ended up as a loss with a score of 2-8, but looking back at it, I couldn't be too upset with my play since my opponent played super tactically without making many mistakes, me being in a bad matchup, and the dice not really going my way. If the game had not ended right away, the score would have been a lot worse. So well played by my opponent.
All right, game 4, going up against the Last Alliance in Recon. I was fairly confident about this one, I must say, going into it, considering he just had Elendil and Gil-galad, so he didn't have a lot of mobility. I had my Knight, I had my Ghosts, I was pretty confident I could get some stuff off the table. And going into it, he pretty much just kind of deployed everybody together. I think it took a turn or two for both of his warbands to come together, so he kind of waited to get them together before moving up the board. And I ran my Knight and 3 of my Ghosts off my left-hand flank. He didn't even try to stop it. He was like, yeah, they're just going to go through, that's fine. Which, I kind of makes sense. I think that was the right decision for him. I was kind of hoping he'd send some stuff after them. So we kind of advanced up. He kind of kept on running up. I was trying to do some shooting with my bows, and it really wasn't popping off. So we ended up clashing kind of on my side of the board. He kind of jumped into my right-hand side, which my troops managed to hold reasonably well. I was doing a pretty good job about fighting them there and holding them there in this like central area and the area off to the side with the ruins, and Aemir was kind of up towards the other side, picking on some troops that were isolated. As the game progressed, that went well. Basically, Aemir managed to wrap up and kill all those guys up on the corner there. Whirl of Blades actually kind of did something, and I lost 4 models, I think, in a row just to trying to charge random elves in that turn. And then Elendil and Gil-galad showed up. They got another 5 kills. So I went from maybe like 8 models dead at the start of the turn to being broken. I got really stressed all of a sudden. I had to start playing really, really defensively, really managing everything as much as I could. So I decided to just try and get Aemir to make a break for the opposite table edge. because considering he's moved 12, he only needed like 2 or 3 turns to be able to do it. So managed to hold just enough Gil-galad and a few guys in the ruins there to stop him from getting a bunch more models off than me. But he got 7 models off, and I got my 4 plus Aemir. So because he's dominant 3, that also counted as 7. And that was it. And then we both ended up breaking each other. Yeah, so that one ended up as a draw, which, I can't complain about. I thought I was going to lose that one for sure after that one turn, considering how defensively I had to play. And he had so many models that were close to getting off. We did end up timing out, but it was getting close to a natural conclusion. Like we were both off like 1 or 2 off from quartering. Yeah, if it had gone on one more turn, he would have gotten more off, and that would have been it. So another really tight game. I think maybe I underestimated the 2 big heroes, but it is what it is.
All right, on to game 4. With my newfound trauma towards the Balrog, I was matched against my next opponent, Josh, and he was running the Depths of Moria. Josh was a great guy, but I was starting to get in my head after the last game. The scenario was then announced to be Reconnoiter, and I wasn't really sure how it would go, since he outnumbered me by quite a bit, but he was also much slower. We came on in a fairly expected fashion with how the terrain was set up. He had goblins running up on the left, right, and in the middle, so I did what I could to block him off with my warbands. I was worried about the sides as it looked like his warbands might overpower mine, so I had to have Gwaihir run the safety, ready to help wherever he was needed. I was soon surprised as Josh ran his Balrog full steam ahead every single turn ahead of his goblins, as it seems he did not fear my army. As his Balrog charged into my elves alone and set Legolas on fire, I decided on a calculated risk and flew Gwaihir directly into the Balrog to get the trap. I called Heroic Strength on Gwaihir and two-handed with all my elves, just hoping he did not get a 6. He gets a 5 high, so I do 5 wounds to the Balrog. Next turn, his goblins crash into my army, and the Balrog runs back the same fight. I call another Heroic Strength and two-hand with all my elves again. The Balrog this time gets a 4 high, luckily. I finish off the Balrog this time, and his army instantly breaks. With that, the game was a wrap, and the score ended up being 20-0. This meant my day ended on a score of 3-1, and I was sitting in 9th out of 80 players going into day 2 of the grand tournament.
Okay, game 5, Sunday morning. I kind of had it in my head. I was thinking about, overnight, thinking about which board we were playing on. And I thought I was playing on one of those heavier terrain city boards that I kind of like the ones I played on in round 1. And I rocked up to the table, and it was not. It was more this like Rohan village one, more open in the middle of the board besides like some trees. And I'm playing against Rangers of Mirkwood, which I think can fire, I want to say 36 or 37 shots a turn at me if they want to. And I have a lot of D5, so I was quite nervous about this game. And we were playing Fog of War, but he ended up kind of deploying kind of on a wide front. And if I tried to run up the center, I would have basically just been shot from the sides. And I was thinking, I'm just going to get broken before I even get there. So I tried to be a little cagey with this. I was kind of hiding behind one of the buildings there, one of the houses, and trying to like move Aemir and like my captain around the one side to go kind of fight his captain and that warband there, and then control my objective, which was this lone tree that was sitting just over the center line. And honestly, I think we just lost too much time doing that. I think I should have just run up the center. In retrospective, the plan did work. I didn't take a ton of casualties. Again, yeah, not a lot will happen in this game, honestly. Just kind of ran up, and then I kind of did that stuff, and we just ended up spending a lot of time doing that. So I managed to finally get on that little warband on the side there and kill him in by like 2 turns or so of combat, which were the only couple turns of combat that we had the whole game. And then I was kind of swinging dudes back around to try and fight his line and get stuff onto the tree there. And then he had run some rangers up on the far side to capture his terrain piece. And I also had Legolas kind of running up in that area to go and contest that. My Legolas to go and contest that with some dudes. Everybody else died besides Legolas. And then we just kind of timed out. So what ended up happening, we didn't break each other. We both had our own targets protected. None of our heroes had been injured. So he ended up getting it because he had guys on his terrain piece. And silly mistake on my part. I was thinking we were getting another turn, so I moved everything off of my terrain piece because I was like, if I just leave 2 guys there, they're going to take 30 shots and die. So I tried to set things up so the next turn I'd be able to pin him and then wrap more guys onto there. And then the final turn was called, and I was like, oh, well, that was a mistake. Yeah, so he ended up winning that one, but you know, either way, it would have been another draw, and I was kind of set up things for a win on the next turn because I really didn't want to get a third draw. So it is what it is. It was yeah, it was an interesting game. Next time, I probably would just gonna march up and right at the center of the Mirkwood Rangers and just see what happens, because I know they melt in combat, but trying to be cagey with them doesn't work as well as I hoped.
For Game 5, I was matched up in a thematic battle against the Pits of Dol Guldur on a Dol Guldur themed board. I congratulated my opponent Eddie for doing so well with his army, as I personally felt this new edition had completely neutered pits. The scenario was Fog of War, which I felt was very favorable for me. I liked all my options there. I chose the White Warg because I felt that Azog had to be in the thick of the fighting, and I would get my opportunities on the White Warg. I chose to protect Gwai here, and also to capture the far left terrain piece. The game started out very interestingly, as he moved the Keeper and his infantry block up the middle while skirting the edges with Azog and his other 10-inch move models. He also had a group of Hunter Orcs sitting on his middle terrain, perhaps thinking that was my terrain target. I met him in the middle with the bulk of my army, while a small contingent held down the flanks, seeing where Azog was going. Gwahir ripped apart the Keeper right away, and I made short work of his main force in the middle. Gwahir and his allies came down to meet Azog, starting with a hurl, and then finishing off Azog the next turn. At the same time, I tied up the Hunter Orc archers and ran to my terrain piece. This game ended 20-0 in my favor.
Okay, so my last game was against Arnor. We were playing Destroy the Supplies. I was playing against Robert, who runs the Richmond Open, and he desperately asked me to put in a plug for that, so I've heard it's a great event. He's a great guy. We had a lot of fun in our game, so go check out that. Anyway, into the game. So we were playing on a kind of like the first board I was playing on, more terrain dense one, like Ruined City. We kind of played a cat and mouse game for the first hour or so of the game as we're like kind of running at each other, because there's a terrain piece in basically the exact center of the board, maybe slightly to my side. And we're just trying to see who was going to swing their army around which side, because then it was going to open up the opposite sides. And eventually I won a priority, and I decided to run Aemir off to the right to go pick off some of his guys who were kind of sitting alone there and fighting where Aranarth was, and kind of make a break towards the center. And then I swung everybody else, Legolas and a bunch of the dead guys, to go and defend my left. So basically blocking Arvidui and Argadir, the cavalry guy, from kind of swinging in and getting my objectives. So that's the kind of how we finally ended up engaged in fighting in combat. Aemir kind of did his thing. He managed to like clean up the corner there where Aranarth was. I put some pressure on Aranarth with my shooting. He was down to like 1 wound, no fate. We ended up doing heroic combat off, actually. His heroic combat went first, and he killed the army of the dead he was fighting. I thought he was going to run away, and he actually went into Aemir's combat. I think maybe Robert was thinking he was still fight 5. So then I rolled for Aemir's combat, and I was like, oh no, yeah, I'm fight 6, and I won the fight. And then Aemir killed Aranarth and the 2 guys he was fighting, and then managed to charge into 2 more warriors and kill them as well. So I got a good lead up there in that corner, and I was able to start pushing hard after that towards his back objectives. Meanwhile, defensively, yeah, Legolas and my army of the dead were fighting along kind of close to my back left objective. And I guess, yeah, I will say Malbeth ended up pinned kind of on the other side of that terrain feature towards the center, fighting Irelis's warband. And yeah, basically how the game was playing out. Towards the end of it, I basically managed to make a break for some of his back 2 objectives. So Aemir managed to charge the one guy who was defending his central one, and I got some other dudes up into that area. And then unfortunately, the game ended up timing out. We had to call it. It would have been nice to finish the turn, but we did have to do the dice down. I did end up burning the 1 supply marker, but he ended up having more models down on the other central one, so it was a low scoring one, but I think it would have been a lot more interesting if I think we both would have wanted more turns to see where it was going, because yeah, it was getting quite spicy there at the end, quite interesting. But it was a good tactical game. I really enjoyed the casual attitude. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
The last game I was matched up against none other than Sam Gallagher from the Gondor Calls for Ale podcast, and he was running the Defenders of the Hornburg. You can check out his perspective of this battle on his channel. The final and remaining scenario was Destroy the Supplies. I felt good going in since I had Gwahir as my trump card. However, he did have a large contingent of Riders of Rohan, and all his infantry were dominant, which does matter in this scenario now. The game started with both of our armies shuffling up two fronts. I was able to get a few rider and horse kills with my elf bows early on. Sam then consolidated his forces on a main front, led by Hera, while keeping several groups of warriors defending his supplies. Helm Hammerhand and Olwyn were tailing this main force. My Iron Hills line met with his Warrior of Rohan line, and the Iron Hills proved superior. At the same time, I continued to have a small group of elves pressure two of his supplies. Gwahir was also able to get into a few combats, first hurling into Hera, and then being able to jump the back line and then barge in to flash kill Helm Hammerhand, Wraith of the Hornburg. In the following turns, Olwyn and a few brave Rohirrim almost take down Gwahir, dealing multiple wounds. Gwahir needed to spend all his fate and 2 remaining might points to survive. However, by this time it was too late. The Battle of the Five Armies line had killed Hera and most of the Rohan battle line. The Elven Warband to the far right that were pushing the objectives were also able to burn the right and middle supplies. On the last turn, Gwahir flies into the last supply and Legolas snipes the banner that was tied up in combat. The final score was 20-0. Sam was really great to play, but if you remember the last Adepticon video, I knew I had to get revenge from losing to him and his brother in the doubles. So, sorry but not sorry, Sam. The final results were me taking 3rd place, my friend Mitchell taking 2nd with the Depths of Moria, and Julian taking 1st with the Eagles. Even though I fell short, the ultimate goal of claiming gold, it was a fantastic weekend. You might ask, will I be back for a 3rd time next year to try to claim gold? Well, that will be a story for another day.
So yeah, overall, I had a lot of fun, honestly. It was a great weekend. 2nd in doubles, that was awesome. Probably the highlight of the weekend for me. It is a lot of fun, and it's nice just meeting new people. Honestly, just meeting all the people from the Discord, the other YouTube and hobby channels out there. That was really cool. And just getting to know the guys and hanging out, that was a lot of fun. And you know what? Honestly, I definitely considering going back. I don't think I can let it stand that I went and I got 2 draws. That feels very weird.
Echoing Ian, the best part of these events is catching up with old friends and hanging out with new friends. It was particularly special getting to meet our patrons we talk with all the time on our Discord. So shout out to Brandon and all of our patrons. Your support makes it possible for us to keep creating content for this awesome game. Check out our Patreon link below to see all the extra perks, including extra content and Into the West Dice. Also, a shout out to our sponsors, Baron of Dice. You can use our code WEST for 5% off on their site. And also, the Mithril Painting Brush Competition, made specifically for all Middle-earth hobbyists. Thanks to all the TOs, Josh, Ray, Jessica, and the team for running a super smooth event. I recommend everyone and anyone to check it out and join in on the fun next year. Until next time.